Close your eyes for a moment and picture an old family photo. Maybe it's your mom with feathered hair, or your dad in a pair of bell-bottom jeans, smiling awkwardly at the camera. Those pictures feel like time capsules, don't they? They hold more than just memories. They carry the spirit of a whole era. Every hairstyle, every jacket, every shoe told a story about the world people were living in. Today we're looking at 10 old-school fashion trends your parents probably rocked. Some of them make us smile, some make us cringe, but all of them remind us just how quickly style changes with time. 1. Bell-bottom jeans. If the 1970s had an official uniform, bell-bottoms would be it. These pants started slim at the top and flared wide at the bottom, like a triangle stretching to the ground. Inspired by naval uniforms, they became the symbol of rebellion and freedom during the counterculture movement. Celebrities like Cher and the Bee Gees wore them proudly, and soon, everyone wanted a pair. Walking down the street, you'd hear the swish of denim brushing against itself with every step. They weren't just pants, they were a statement of being young and free. For a while, you couldn't escape them. School dances, concerts, family photos. By the 1980s, the craze faded as straight-leg jeans took over. But even today, when someone slips on a pair, you can almost hear the disco music playing in the background. Bell-bottoms were more than fabric. They were a movement stitched into denim. Leisure suits. In the mid-1970s, men found themselves drawn to a new kind of suit, the leisure suit. Made of polyester, often in pastel or earthy colors, these suits were relaxed but stylish. They weren't meant for the office. They were meant for the weekend. With wide lapels, big collars, and flared trousers, they made men feel sharp without being stiff. Pair it with a gold chain and an open shirt, and suddenly you were John Travolta on the dance floor. It was a time when fashion met fun, and comfort finally became a priority. For dads everywhere, the leisure suit was the perfect mix of cool and casual. But by the early 1980s, polyester's reputation for being hot and uncomfortable pushed them out of favor. Still, look back at those family albums and there's a good chance your father wore one with pride. 3. Poodle skirts. If your mom grew up in the 1950s, chances are she twirled around in a poodle skirt. These wide, swingy skirts often had felt appliques of poodles stitched on, complete with a little leash. They were bright, playful, and perfect for dancing at sock hops. Paired with saddle shoes and a cardigan, it was the ultimate teenage outfit. The poodle skirt captured the spirit of innocence after World War II, when young people were carving out their own culture. Girls loved how the fabric spun when they danced to rock and roll records. They became a symbol of carefree youth, of jukeboxes and milkshakes. By the 1960s, fashion moved towards sleeker, more modern looks, and the poodle skirt quietly disappeared. But every Halloween when someone puts one on, you can almost smell the root beer floats and hear Elvis crooning through the diner jukebox. 4. Members-only jackets. By the 1980s, nothing said cool like a members-only jacket. With its narrow collar, epaulets on the shoulders, and signature logo on the chest, it was instantly recognizable. Celebrities wore them, commercials pushed them, and teenagers begged their parents for one. The jackets came in every color imaginable, from gray and black to bold red. They worked for school, dates, or just hanging out with friends. There was a sense of exclusivity, as if the name alone made you part of a secret club. For many, putting one on was like stepping into adulthood. But trends move fast, and by the 1990s, members-only jackets were replaced by oversized denim and sporty windbreakers. Still, open an old closet in your parents' house and you might just find one hanging there, carrying the scent of the past. 5. Tie-dye. Everything tie-dye wasn't just clothing, it was an expression. Born in the late 1960s, it was the uniform of the hippie generation. Every swirl of color was unique, making each shirt a work of art. People made them at home, dipping shirts in buckets of dye, creating patterns that shouted peace and love. It wasn't just fashion. It was a lifestyle, a statement against conformity. At concerts and protests, crowds looked like a rainbow spilled across the fields. Parents of the era wore tie-dye as a badge of their beliefs. But as the 1970s ended, Tie-dye's wild colors began to feel dated. Still, the style resurfaces every decade, reminding us of a time when fashion was more about freedom than following rules. Tie-dye wasn't about matching, and it was about meaning. 6. Platform shoes. If you remember disco, you remember platform shoes. These towering shoes, sometimes adding 4 or 5 inches of height, were impossible to ignore. Men and women both wore them, strutting into clubs like they owned the dance floor. The bigger the platform, the bolder the statement. They came in shiny leathers, glittery finishes, and bright colors. For many, they weren't just footwear. They were a ticket to confidence. Parents who lived through the 1970s probably remember wobbling around in these shoes, trying not to trip on the sidewalk. By the 1980s, the fad faded, replaced by sneakers and simpler styles. But platforms still make comebacks now and then, especially when fashion wants to be loud. Looking back, they weren't practical, but they sure made life feel like a party. 7. Shoulder pads. The 1980s loved power, and nothing said power like shoulder pads. Sewn into blazers, dresses, and even sweaters, they made shoulders look broad and commanding. For women entering the workforce, it was about more than fashion. It was about confidence. The look created sharp lines that said, "I mean business." TV shows like Dynasty and stars like Joan Collins turned shoulder pads into the symbol of success. Your mom might have worn them to work, to parties, even just to the grocery store. They gave a sense of strength in a world that was changing quickly. But by the 1990s, the oversized look felt too extreme, and shoulder pads were quietly pulled out of fashion. Still, whenever we think of the 80s, those bold, boxy silhouettes are impossible to forget. 8. Leg warmers. In the 1980s, leg warmers weren't just for dancers, they became a fashion staple, thanks to the fitness craze and movies like Flashdance. Worn over leggings or jeans, they added color and flair to any outfit. They were cozy, stretchy, and surprisingly versatile. Girls wore them to school, moms wore them to aerobics class, and even some dads gave them a try at home workouts. They came in neon colors, stripes, and every texture imaginable. Leg warmers made everyday life feel a little more theatrical, like everyone was about to break into a dance routine. By the early 1990s, the trend faded, dismissed as too flashy for regular wear. But for a brief, shining moment, leg warmers made the world feel like one big stage. 9. Fanny packs. Before backpacks and crossbody bags, the fanny pack ruled the 1980s and early 90s. Worn around the waist, they kept hands free and pockets light. Tourists loved them, parents found them practical, and kids thought they were futuristic. They came in neon colors, metallic sheens, and even leather for a more serious look. Families on vacation often had at least one in the group, stuffed with maps, snacks, and cameras. They were convenient, but they weren't exactly sleek. By the mid-1990s, fashion declared them unfashionable, and they became a punchline. Still, ask your parents, and they'll tell you just how handy they were. And funny enough, fanny packs keep sneaking back into style, proving that convenience never really goes out of fashion. 10. Acid wash jeans. Finally, the acid wash jean, the ultimate late 1980s trend. With their streaky, faded look, they felt rebellious and edgy. Unlike plain blue denim, these jeans had attitude. They were made by washing denim with bleach-soaked stones, giving each pair a unique pattern. Teens wore them with oversized jackets, while rock stars strutted across stages in them. Acid wash was everywhere, at malls, at school dances, even in yearbook photos. For parents of that generation, owning a pair was almost a rite of passage. But as the 1990s began, minimalism took over, and the wild patterns lost their charm. Today, acid wash sometimes peeks back into stores, but nothing beats the original craze. They remind us of mixtapes, roller rinks, and a time when being bold meant standing out in denim. Looking back at these trends is like flipping through the pages of a family scrapbook. Some of them make us laugh, others bring a wave of warmth, but all of them show how fashion is never just about clothes. It's about who we were and how we wanted to be remembered. So which of these old school trends did your parents rock? Maybe you've even tried one yourself. Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on American Rewind. Because the past isn't just behind us, it's stitched into everything we wear today.